If we look at the trend of the vote count,
Yes.
it's very possible that we will have a new man in the White House come
Yes.
January, right?
It is highly likely now.
But would you be surprised if at the end of the day, Joe Biden wins the election?
At the end of the day, I would place my bet that Joe Biden will win. Yes.
So why do you think that Joe? What are the factors, the main factors that you think that help Joe Biden win this election?
Well, many elements. One would be the latest one, and the most devastating one would be the COVID-19. Because Trump's handling of COVID-19 was a disaster. You know, the U.S. and South Korea, the Republic of Korea, had the same amount of virus on the same day at the beginning of the year. And look at what happened, the contrast. The U.S. now over 200,000. And look at Thailand. We have 60.
That's right.
That's the number of deaths. And so Thailand did very well. The U.S. did probably the worst in the world. And the U.S. had all the technologies, all the leading doctors, the CDC, but nevertheless, leadership mattered, and Trump was the leader, and he played the game very badly. Yes.
So to manage the disaster, it's probably depend on the management.
Yes. Yes, especially in the U.S., the person or the president, he needed to take the leadership, and it would have been very easy. He should have just followed the guidance of the doctors and the scientists, and he had the best. Dr. Fauci.
That's right, but he doesn't listen to doctors or science.
Well, he
Anti-science.
in a sense.
In a sense.
You see, he had this erroneous assumption that he could only win if the economy was good.
Right.
And the assumption follows that the only way to get the economy to be good is to have people not locked up at home but go back to work, which means kids must go to school so parents can go to work. And that led to many deaths. And that was why he, when he found out that COVID was not going to go away, his strategy then was to ignore it and to lie about it, to pretend that it didn't exist. And his rallies had cost many lives. In fact, the latest study indicated that his rallies, now this was about beginning 4 weeks ago, cost already about 70,000 new infections.
Oh, that's a lot.
And 700 deaths. And that's at least. That's from Johns Hopkins.
No, but if you look at the popular votes, Trump did get more popular votes than the last time, right? So it must mean that his message, no matter how illogical it may seem, seems to have struck a right chord with many Americans, right?
Well, this is it. This is a very curious thing because it does indicate that the country is completely divided and the division is much deeper than we were hoping for. And yes, you know, what I saw about Trump was that the personality was a major problem. It wasn't only the policy, and we can talk about the policy problems, but he was showing something that was a major concern. You know, the way many psychiatrists have already indicated that he had some psychological problems, and it showed, you know. But nevertheless, he had received massive support, and that, of course, was because he picked the right element. You know, globalization was leading to the widening gap between the rich and the poor. The poor sensed that globalization was not fair to them. And so Trump picked that up. And that was one of the elements that led to the strong support, especially from the working class.
So let's say we can choose between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Should we go to the devil we know, or should we go to the one we don't know, but we hope it will be better?
Well, the one that we know
He's a real devil.
is frightening.
Frightening, yes.
Yes,
And
frightening.
can it be more frightening in the next
No, because
4 years?
Joe Biden has been around
Right.
for a long, long time. I assume that when you said the one that we know was Trump, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So Joe Biden also is well known because
Right.
he's been in politics for a long time. Trump, on the other hand, just came in.
That's right.
You know,
yeah.
So I think that the country, the U.S. and the world would probably be in more steady hands. Yeah.
What do you think would be the biggest difference that Joe Biden's leadership and compared to Trump? What would be the most significant departure from what Trump has been doing?
Well, I think we will probably see less emphasis on the tweets. We will see less actions based on gut feeling, emotional feelings. We will see a president who would listen to all sides and then digest. We will see a president who will read. Trump doesn't like to read.
Right.
And who will be informed.
Yeah.
And who will follow, if you talk about COVID, he will follow the guidance of the leading doctors and scientists. And other policies, I think he will be able to make decision in a way that a leader should make.
That means going back to the normalcy of American
Yes, you picked the right word because the last 4 years had not been normal. The U.S. had changed rather completely. You know, it's kind of like an old friend that you've been with for a long time suddenly became a different person altogether.
Yeah.
And that was what happened. So if you look at what Trump has done in foreign affairs, you would see that he had tried to dismantle what the U.S. had been trying to build since the Second World War. You know, we talk about the liberal international order with multilateral institutions like the United Nations, WTO.
And he has been shunning all those.
Yes, yes. And even more importantly, he had been shunning U.S. traditional allies and been kind of criticizing all of the U.S. friends, but not saying anything negative about President Putin. So that's very unusual.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But from what Trump already started, if Joe Biden become the president, he cannot just suddenly change everything, right? He has to gradually change towards something more Democrat-like. And I believe, maybe you will agree or not, there will be some kind of, not a politic tour, but a diplomat tour.
Yes. Well, definitely. One thing that I noticed is that in America, parents were afraid when their kids would listen to Trump because the way he talked.
Right.
Rudeness, the words that one never used in polite societies is used all the time. No diplomacy. With Biden, you would probably see the return to the U.S. as we have known the U.S. For so many years. But some of the things will take time to correct. For example, one thing that Trump has done which hurt the U.S. rather deeply is the message that the U.S. Is no longer reliable to its friends.
Right.
You know, agreements signed by the U.S. can be ignored by the U.S. Look at what happened in Syria when he suddenly pulled out just because he had a conversation with the president of Turkey and abandoned the group, the Kurds that had been helping the U.S. fight Islamic State, for example, pulling out of the nuclear deal with Iran, when Iran did not violate the agreement at all.
Is there something positive about Donald Trump at all?
Something positive. Well, in a sense, I think he highlights the fact that maybe globalization did ignore the poor, the
Right.
working class. And maybe it's time for liberal leaders to take a look and to see how they can help the poor more. Don't leave them, aside.
Yeah.
So that's one message, and I think Joe Biden has mentioned that already.
I think this is a message that I
Yeah.
believe has resonated best among American people,
Yes,
especially among his supporters. Right?
yes, yes. So that was a problem that Clinton kind of failed to address.
4 years ago.
Yes, 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
yes,
I think Trump was able to pick on that and convince the working class people that they were being ignored and he would protect them. But in actual fact, he didn't. And of course, the other problem with Trump was the lies. I mean, we know the amount of lies. It's incredible, even in the last few hours.
Yeah, that's right.
And to the degree that his own counselor invented the word alternative reality.
That's right.
Alternative
And
fact.
what message is that for the new generation?
Since you're talking about
Yeah.
the issue of lies, so why do you think he has been saying telling all these lies, and yet he has been able to get away with them?
Well, and he knew that. He actually said he felt that his supporters would believe whatever he says. And to me, it's kind of like an insult to the supporters. He even mentioned that if he had killed someone in
Oh
the
yes, he said
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
middle of Fifth Avenue in New York City,
Yeah.
Nothing
his
would happen.
supporters would still support him.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And that was shocking. But the psychology of lie is that I think he feels that he needs to have a target himself, and it's all about him, And if he needs to, if the reality is not in favor of what he's doing, then he has to lie about it, and he would lie over and over again to make people think that it's the truth.
And that's what he did again this morning when
Yes.
he claimed there was widespread fraud in the vote
Yes.
count
Yes.
without producing any evidence to support his claim.
No evidence at all.
that's it.
But his family, his
Yeah.
sons also did the same
right.
same thing, and it's very frightening because the U.S. had stood for reliability, morality, leadership of the free world, and then you have a massive change like this. So.
So
I think
the-
one thing that
yeah.
good that come out from this is the fact-checking process, because right now all news agencies in U.S. have their own fact-checking department, and they do
Yes.
live fact-check while Donald Trump giving a speech anywhere.
That's right, and it's also contagious because the BBC also does it too across the ocean.
He should
and
be proud
others.
to go down in history as being the first American president to be fact-checked by the media.
Yes,
Around the world.
and to be done very easily.
That's right.
Because he just lies outright when the facts are clear.
That's right.
Yeah.
Blatant lies.
Sometimes I'm shocked, because the lies are could be discovered immediately
Nice.
that he was lying.
So now that Joe Biden is only a step away from taking
Yes.
over the White House, and according to the latest trend in the vote count, so is there anything we should watch out, especially from Thailand's point of view under Joe Biden leadership?
Well, I think we will see that it's going to be less transactional. So you remember Trump would he's transactional, so he only looks at the
He like trade.
numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was pressing Thailand as well as others on trying to make sure that the trade is balanced. In this sense, Biden would be less inclined to do so. Now, I feel that Biden will probably lead the U.S. back into the TPP, which is now the CPTPP.
Right.
That's right.
And it would be good for Thailand to join the TPP
Yeah.
as soon as possible. I have actually talked to numerous countries, and there's a willingness for Thailand to join. You know, and so it would be very important because otherwise we would be at a major disadvantage to our trading partners. Yeah.
And what about issues of human rights, democracies? The people that are looking forward to more sort of pressure from the U.S. under Biden leadership on these issues.
Yes,
More emphasis on this issue, which something that Trump administration has been ignoring.
The Trump administration has been ignoring this issue because Trump himself ignored, because he was, many people have said that he was a dictator worshiper. He looked up at Putin, he looked up at the Turkish leader. So one would expect that Biden would probably go back to being a U.S. which is more has some additional concerns about human rights, about democracy. During the Trump period, he himself didn't care about democracy or human rights, but the bureaucracy, the State Department, still did to a degree.
Right.
But you know, with this change, there will be a revival of a concern to a degree.
So they'll be more active toward Thailand, because I feel like in the past 4 years, Thailand hasn't been didn't get that much attention from U.S. And we were included in Indo-Pacific policy.
Yes, Indo-Pacific policy is an interesting thing because it was first actually introduced by an ASEAN member as well as Japan. The U.S. then picked it up with Secretary Tillerson. But in the Indo-Pacific policy or strategy is still a bit unclear.
Right.
And of course, we would like ASEAN to be at the heart of this strategy. So this is an area that Thailand and ASEAN should work actively with a Biden administration.
Under Trump leadership, I mean, it's quite clear that the U.S. seems to have put pressure on countries in this region to take sides. Either you're with the U.S. or you are with China. Right?
Yes.
I think that's the message is quite clear, especially in most recent months when Mike Pompeo, I mean, has been talking about the new dictatorship, the tyranny.
Well, Mike Pompeo had used
right?
very strong words against China, back to the Cold War.
That's right, describing the Communist Party of China as a new tyranny, right? And urging countries in the free world, including Thailand, of course, to take sides. So you think, of course, I mean, we don't expect Biden to take that kind of aggressive posturing toward China, but Biden cannot depart very much from the U.S. stand toward China, right? As was under Trump.
Yes, the relationship between the U.S. and China have some structural problems that has to be addressed. The practice of China regarding trade to a degree, regarding technology, U.S. the transfer of technology that they required U.S. companies to do so inside China. So those structural elements probably will have to be addressed. But they won't be the emotional dealing with the Chinese. I think it would be better thought out.
Okay, the language used would not be that as aggressive.
Yes, and the other thing is that Trump's "Make America Great Again" actually meant make Trump great.
Right.
But in addition to that, it isolated the U.S. The U.S. abandoned allies. With Biden, I think they will be the approach to rebuild the alliance. Because in our world today, a U.S. acting alone like that is not as effective as the U.S. being backed and supported by allies.
Right.
You just came back from the U.S. after having spent some years there.
Yes.
So what are your friends back there saying about the election?
Well, they were concerned for their physical being, physical safety, because Trump, and even today, you know, one of his sons tweeted that Trump wants to go all out with
Yeah.
war.
Yeah.
He's been
Fight to the death, you said.
he's been encouraging his supporters to use violence.
Right.
The words that he used: liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia. Liberate is a very violent word, you know, and it's been scary. So, and to the radical right, the white supremacist group, he said, stand by. And that was a message for them to be prepared to use violence. And he had already built up this false feeling that the elections would be fraudulent,
Yeah.
Right.
only if he loses.
Yes.
Now, can you imagine that? A leader
That's
saying,
right, yeah.
if I lose, then it's fraudulent election. If I win, then it's fine. I mean, now, with that, I have talked to quite a few of my friends in the U.S., and they have been telling me about people having to hire extra security guards now, this week. Places are boarded up.
Right.
You know, in Beverly Hills, stores are boarded up. So they're expecting actually the worst.
So they think that there might be another riot, and or there
there is
actually
a
already
risk.
protests
Yes.
already going
Yes.
on right now.
Yeah.
So it all depends on Trump handles the aftermath of the election, right? If he continues to be provocative as he has been, I mean, then
Yes.
troubles that we fear will happen, will certainly happen. Right?
Yes, and the U.S. has another problem with the process of elections process. If once the elections is decided, once we know the results, the person in the White House, the president, if he loses, he still remains in office for another 10 weeks.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
That's a very long time for someone who has lost the
That's
election
right, so-
to be in office. In the UK, it's overnight. You know,
That's
they
right.
have
That's
the,
it. So that means that Trump will be in a position to do things unthinkable, right?
Still would be.
Given
Yes.
given Trump being Trump, I mean,
Yes, except for the fact that I've noticed that some of the Republicans are backing away from him
Yeah.
now.
Right.
And when he made that amazing speech that you mentioned at the beginning, with many lies about the elections, and he declared himself victorious already.
that's right. Yeah.
You would notice that Vice President Pence was nowhere to be seen.
That's right.
That's
Yes.
true.
That's
So that's an indication that Republicans are now backing away from him. Yeah.
So, final question. So, what do you think countries like Thailand can learn from what has been happening in the U.S. since Trump came to power?
Well, I think it's Thailand must look at the political process. I think that's very important. You know, so we must ensure that we have a constitution which would lead to a peaceful and very good future. You know, the U.S. Constitution, we have noticed, had some problems. And the U.S. Constitution allowed a person like Trump to come in the first place and to stay for 4 years. And so this is a lesson in politics that we have to no longer assume that the U.S. is a perfect example of.
Right.
You see? And so maybe we can become a leader. Well, one thing for sure, Thailand succeeded so well with COVID that we became one of the world's leaders in how to fight, on how to fight COVID. So the message that we should take home is that we should be confident about ourselves and also look at how we approach policy in a comprehensive way.
Yeah.